Thank you. We actually have a historical context because since 2007, we've had a partnership with the learning community, and it's been an outstanding partnership that helped us open the doors to many other charter schools. There are 5 in particular that serve Central Falls, and I have managed within our district, within our the trustees, with their full consent, to pave a path so that if it was reading with the charters, with the learning community, it was dual language with the international charter, it's opening up the whole middle school context with Segway. We just kept growing and growing. And through the Gates Foundation, we literally pulled it together and committed to each other. So then it became not just a single district, single charter school compact, but a group compact with all of us truly respecting each other and learning from each other. We've continued to do that. We continue today, and we have some outstanding plans to continue that work.
And Jill and Megan, you'll say a little bit about the learning community side of this collaboration.
Well, I'm a teacher at the learning community, one who did some of the work with some amazing colleagues at Veterans Elementary and Ella-Risk, and working on student achievement in reading, and just loving the work that we're doing and trying to move students forward.
Graciously sharing their units of study, continuously showing us how to flexibly group. We all talk about it, but really giving us that safety net and what it takes to do that work. We've learned a great deal.
Thank you. Let me turn to our colleagues, and your colleagues as well, in Providence. What's the nature of the partnership between labor and management?
We have an organization called United Providence. I think, as with Central Falls, there's a historical context. There's always a historical context. Ours was, and my partner in crime, Steve Smith, knows even more about the historical context, having lived it. But we, Providence had come off a very challenging school year immediately prior to my arrival in July. Because of very dramatic budget issues coupled with a state law that said teacher notifications have to be done by March 1st. Every teacher had been terminated, 5 schools have been closed. Trust was not high, let me put it that way. And we, the district had in that year, prior to all of those events, tried to start a labor management collaborative. Our state is, I believe, the only state under the Restart model that allows for a labor management collaborative educational management organization. And so we were faced in our district with numerous challenges, more and more identified schools, and a real need to say, how are we going to together turn this around? So in response to that, we have started United Providence. It is an independent 501c3. We are trying to build the organization while doing the work, and I will let my colleague fill in from there.
It was an interesting year, to say the least. But we started at the Providence Teachers Union going back to 2004 with Hope High School. And Dr. Gallo was a part of that. But that was one school, and we were met with a challenge from the then Commissioner McWalters to do things dramatically different. And that meant not throwing out collective bargaining, but rethinking the way we bargained collectively. And we decided that at that time the union could have simply stepped away from the table when there was the show cause hearing as whether Hope should be opened or should be closed permanently, and we decided to be a partner with the district. And we had some very significant success, in our opinion, but it wasn't systemic. We had a vision at that time that Hope would be the prototype for other schools, other high schools that were going through the same process. And as you know, superintendent's change. As I was joking with Dr. Lucy, I'm very much hoping that we have an announcement soon that she's the superintendent, because I am soon becoming the Elizabeth Taylor of union presidents.
To which I responded, but you're much better looking, and he said, I better be, she's dead.
That's a preview of coming attractions at Nalilolo's funeral home. But I think from our perspective that, you know, we're always told as a union that you're focused on wages, benefits, and conditions of employment, and that's what the state law allows. But it doesn't say we have to stop there. So we want to advance a systemic change where each individual building will enter in its own collective bargaining agreement. And it'll be much more than wages, benefits, and conditions of employment. It'll be, what's our game plan for the next year, 2 years, 3 years? How are we going to move the school forward? And relying on the untapped resource, the classroom teacher. If you're a teacher in a building and you've seen superintendents come and go and curriculum come and go and open classroom, closed classroom, team teaching, you name it, after a while you can become somewhat jaded and you feel that you do not have a voice. So this is empowering the classroom teacher, setting up a partnership. So we rethink the roles. Management now becomes a function, not a position, where the building delegate works as a partner with the principal, not as the complaint receptacle for the building or the gotcha person when the new principal comes in and can't figure it out and you just watch that person fail. We're at the beginning stages. And as Dr. Lucy pointed out, we were on our way, but any endeavor, there's challenges and there's successes and failures, but we are committed to the work. I believe this is the best opportunity in my 9 years as union president. I think the ingredients are there. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. If it was easy, everybody do it. But we are committed to the work, and I think this all too often Rhode Island is noted for the first in the nation for a lot of negative things. But Providence now has an opportunity to be the first, well, not the opportunity, we have taken the opportunity to be the first in the nation to have a labor management EMO that can realize, we're hoping, the promise of charters, where every school will be putting their best efforts forward and really sharing practices. We hope that these 3 schools, once they're successful, the things that happen at these schools can be replicated throughout the district. So we're excited and we're ready.
I'm going to ask a question, and then I'm going to turn to the audience, and anyone on the panel will ask anyone else a question, and anyone from the audience can come and ask a question as well. I'm going to talk about historical context for these kinds of collaborations. The historical context, which you hinted at, is around competition and conflict, which is creating a culture of distrust in many of the places that we're trying to now bring together, because we're trying to bring together work. So charters, traditional schools and districts, union leadership with district leadership. These have historically been adversarial relationships, and now we're coming together to cooperate. I guess the question I have to ask you is, what kind of work have you done to change the historical context and culture, which would lead to suspicion and distrust continually, rather than collaboration and innovation? What's the work that you have to do to change that context to make this collaboration better? I'll start with Francis, who's leaning forward.
We began in a very simple way. We literally visited the learning community. It was an amazing trip. I went because upon visiting students during the summer, getting to know them, parents were jumping for joy because they had received phone calls saying that they won the lottery. They were going to the learning community. So I went to see, what is this learning community? And then I asked my union president to join me, and I asked teachers to join me. And teachers reluctantly came, but they kept saying, why should we go there? There's 10 students to a classroom, they get to handpick who's there, and they went on and on and on. And I said, you need to come because we need to dispel the myth. And they were surprised. They saw classrooms that looked like theirs. They certainly saw students that absolutely reflected their students. The demographics of our schools actually are a tight match. And so slowly but surely, over the visitations, over the initial sharing, and then over professional development where we had listening ears. Not, I told you so, do this, I know everything. No, it was an exchange. It was sort of a let it all go, almost a fight, but the other side listened, and then keenly aware of all of the issues. We both agreed there's a lot to learn and a lot to give on both sides, and very slowly we began a partnership. We literally started with just a few classrooms. And in those few, even though we really worked hard to get everybody to go together, there were still a few teachers who, no matter what they heard, were not going to do it in the classroom. And so we didn't force them. We just said, fine, you did agree, but you're not doing it. That's okay. We looked the other way. And in the end, at the end of the year, the end of the pilot year, we had an even better understanding, because the teachers who went to the training but refused to use it in the classroom versus the teachers who went to the training and did everything they possibly could had kindergarten students who met benchmark versus kindergarten students who hadn't really changed. And what a shame. And yet, what a real way to learn. From there, we simply expanded to all our kindergarten classes, and then over the years, to all of K, all of 1, and all of 2. It made all the difference in the world. A listening ear, a keen interest in the mission, the children, and then practice.
Jim and Meg and Julie and others, why does it make sense to partner with the very institution you were created to be different? Charters were created so that you wouldn't have the same barriers and obstacles that exist in traditional systems. So how did you overcome your bias, but we're now moving closer to the very thing you were created to distance yourself?
Like, I think the point is the students, and we wanted to be, well, I wasn't there in the first couple of years, but I can assume that Meg and Sarah wanted to be that think tank that was able to step back and really think about what teachers needed to move students. And I think Mr. Smith said it very well, that we need to put the power back in with those professionals that have gone to school and that have the passion to move students. We need to give them more power to make those decisions. I mean, I think that's where it originated from, but I came in a couple years later. So.
Schools of labor management, broken glass metaphor.
So I think the short answer to how have we prepared people? How have we prepared people? At this point, we haven't done enough yet. I think one learning the district's had over this past year is with the 4 schools that had already started prior to United Providence, it is in no way enough to say you should be a collaborative team. Go for it. People really don't know how to do that. And so one very serious effort we're making is partnering with ABC Unified in California and Saul Rubenstein from Rutgers University, who's studied districts that have done labor management collaboration that led to results for students, and that results for students is enormously important. And on May 14th and 15th, we have a 2-day session with a team of people from ABC Unified with Dr. Rubenstein and really working on what is collaboration, why would you want to do it anyway, looking at some of the results for kids, what are the skills, what are the stages, but it's hard work, and we shouldn't underestimate that.
Having a history of suing superintendents, I think kind of the previous superintendent, we kind of broke the ice when I served him with a suit in federal court, and the one before that, a vote of no confidence, I think was different here. Is, and I have to say it one more time, is we need some consistency on that end. Teachers need that. They have to know who's going to be there, and I can't tell you how many times, even with building principals, are they going to stay? Because if they're not going to stay, then why should I invest in this approach if there's going to be a change in 2 years, and it'll be a dramatic change? It's not just the person that left. So what we're trying to do, the goal is, it shouldn't rely on who the union president is and what his or her philosophy on leading a union is, or who the superintendent is. What's been achieved in ABC Unified is, if you want to work here, this is the way we do business. That if you want to be union president, what are you going to bring to the table to enhance this partnership? So you can't run and say, well, I'm not going to do this. Well, you have all these committees you have to serve on. You have these meetings you have to attend. Governance structures that are firmly in place. School board policy that supports it. These things are just starting to come into play in Providence, and they didn't exist prior to. So it's not enough for a union to say, we really want to collaborate, certainly if there's not a dance partner, and vice versa. So I think that's where we are now. It hasn't penetrated the buildings yet, and that's what I think a real positive is that we kind of required all 9 intervention schools to attend on the 14th and 15th, but the superintendent had opened it up to any school, as long as the principal and the delegate wanted to attend. It couldn't just be either. And the problem we're having now, quite frankly, is a very unanticipated one, that we may have too many schools participating in terms of being able to deal with the coverage at the schools. So we have over half our schools that have expressed an interest and want to attend, and we still have another day. And when Gary Smuts, the superintendent from ABC Unified, and Laura Rico, the immediate past president, presented before the delegates, the initial reaction was, well, we've been there before. What about the principal, and what about this, and what about that? And they were very direct as how this works, that you really need someone who wants it to work. It's not the panacea, but their results are amazing. And the counter to this, what I hear all the time as well, that collaboration thing. I had a school board chair that once told a mediator, and we were trying to make a contract work. I read an article, unions that want to collaborate, that's a smokescreen for a power grab. So so where do you go from there? Well, we're not there. We're in a much different place. But we're very cognizant that this isn't just about the adults, and ABC Unified proves it. Our challenge is, we don't have 15 years to make this work and to develop. And when I first became president, I went to the Union Leader 101 course. And I haven't done anything that was suggested at that meeting. Not because I rejected the ideas. I didn't have time, I didn't have the opportunity. It was supposed to bring your membership along, gain consensus. You don't want to be too far out. But when you have schools closing, schools under intervention status, budget crisis, you really don't have the opportunity to wait for everyone to be comfortable. So I think our challenge is so that these schools see it really works there. So the history is still there. The history hasn't gone away. And there are the people on both sides that are saying, this isn't really going to work. She may not stay, and this guy's crazy. So things will change. But we have to dig in and show that it can work for that teacher in the classroom, that it really makes the difference that they see the results, and this is a better way of doing business. I want to come to school now because I'm in an environment that actually works and where I feel I'm a real professional. I'm treated that way, both principal and classroom teacher.
I want to welcome Commissioner Gitz to the conversation, and I'll open the floor, and Don, you feel free to ask questions as well.
Stephen, from what you're saying, it seems to me that it's very important for your school committee to have the same philosophy that you have. Because if they don't, then you're not going to get the superintendent that helps.
Well, I certainly experienced that last year. Yeah. Not only a school committee that wants to see it work, but that wants to see us all employed. But I believe the mayor has made some very thoughtful choices, and I see a difference in this school committee, for example, than the one that I dealt with last year. But yes, I think the foundation, and one of the things we learned from ABC Unified is the school board sets the tone and sets the policy. So when they interview for superintendent, what do you bring to the table in this partnership? And if you're not comfortable working in a partnership, then you really should look someplace else. But one of the data that we've seen from ABC is they attract the top 5% of students graduating out of college and education in the state of California. Their superintendent was named Superintendent of the Year last year. They don't have a difficult time attracting leaders, principals. And that's the goal. That's what we're looking to do. But yes, the school board's absolutely essential if you don't have that supportive, especially for a superintendent. The superintendent cannot do this alone. It's just not going to work.
I was interested in that same slide that kind of pitted cooperation against next generation. And I was interested in that next generation continuum and where do you feel like your partnerships are with respect to that. You guys have definitely nailed the cooperation piece. And maybe have Dr. Shapley talk about some examples of next generation and what that looks like to him as well.
So the next gen delivery models are just emerging. So let me see if I can describe what that looks like and why there is some fear out there. So we are curious about a little group called Rocket Ship. And Rocket Ship is in San Jose. They have 3 schools. When you meet them, you think they have 300, but they only have 3. And they operate on essentially a 40-to-1 class size in primary grades. Because the youngsters spend half their time in a wide open laboratory, tech lab, where most of the rote work is done. And as a result of that, the teachers there feel as if they can really get on to rigorous work. So their achievement has been high. Their the work across the teachers and the families has been great, and they run a more efficient model. And that efficient model translates into greater compensation for the teaching staff, which they're proud of. To date, they're only K-5, and there are only 3 schools. So we're looking at that. I mean, a number of you are probably familiar with Khan Academy, and the whole Khan Academy model where the teacher becomes the tutor and the kids do the work at home at night and come in and get supported during the day. So how many of those models will we begin to see? The ability of sort of online, anytime, anywhere, merit badge, mastery types are other things we're seeing. But I would say at the moment, you have 3 or 4 organizations, Carpe Diem in Arizona, a Rocket Ship, and then a few school districts and charters that are trying a kind of blended learning approach doing this. But the early results are pretty good. And there is some fear. A number of local teachers associations worry that it will reduce the number of teaching positions because of this. We are watching a group called FIN, Future is Now Schools. A guy by the name of Steve Barr, who founded Green Dot, is launching the first school in the fall in New Orleans, a charter union hybrid school in New Orleans. So, jury's still out.
As a question, the success of these efforts depends on the capacity of the organizations involved to communicate with each other, to document and share their learning, to develop new tools that enhance the effectiveness of the work in the classroom, across classrooms and schools, across schools, and informs governing bodies, so that their policies and practices in the future mirror this and advance this work. That's a wonderful description, but both of these kinds of partnerships exist in districts that have had budget cuts, tremendous budget cuts over the last decade or so. And their infrastructure, whether you call it central office infrastructure, or the infrastructure even in many charter schools, is barely equipped to handle the responsibilities that they now have. Not only negative about it, but dire about it, but how do you manage to acquire the resources to support collaboration in this kind of context so that it does actually inform your work, strengthen your communication, and enhance effectiveness? And I would ask Superintendent.
We apply to the Rhode Island Foundation and the VNET Foundation. No, I think it's an excellent question because even the infrastructure to build the partnership. So I wasn't kidding when I said we're trying to build the organization while doing the work. So Steve and I and some of our colleagues, both from the district and from the PTU leadership, for example, spend the entire day interviewing potential staff for United Providence. So that means, we all have other day jobs. So I think that's an excellent question, and I really don't have the answer.
Right.
Sorry.
That's okay. Right.
Well, I think we can't forget our most important resource, which is our individual willpower. And I think where there is that will, you do it. We certainly have gotten together. We get together each and every week. We give each other homework. We're not too happy sometimes, but we're doing that. And of course you do, without joking, we really do seek other philanthropies. And that's what the work's about. In the meantime, I know that our particular compact is getting that word to parents. Parents are an incredible advocacy group. And when they understand a portfolio of schools, Central Falls has two little elementary schools, an early childhood center, one middle school, one high school. Parents don't generally have a choice. They, yes, put in for the lottery, those who know about a charter school, but the vast majority of my parents wouldn't know about a charter school. They do now because of the advocacy and the work we have. But if you're committed to a portfolio, if you're committed to equity and access for all, then I think that cuts down on the competition and builds up on the cooperation, and people are coming. People want to know more. Our open forums are really packed. Fathers, not just moms, but fathers are coming out. That's a rarity. We have volunteers in our high school each and every day. Parent volunteers are in our high school. I've been around in the public schools in Providence and East Greenwich and Jamestown. That doesn't exist. It does in Central Falls. And we're providing more and more training. And the more we do, then the more parents want to know, more parents want to know, the more pressure comes to bear on the public sector. And so, you know, I keep saying I'm not political, but I'm getting political. I mean, you got to get to kind of know. And it's the power of the people, and these are the people who are protecting their children and really helping to open their horizons.
I'm going to push further into the audience again. Because often, because of the passion and commitment, people like yourselves, you settle for less than you do. You say, I will just work harder, and I will will my way into this. And that works in some places, but it doesn't get us into the system that we need. And I also think it's deceiving. Oh, well, you don't need it. Right? When in fact you do need it. So if you had to ask for more from higher education institutions, as the city has asked for Brown, if you had to ask for more from RIFE, if you had to ask more from the community partners, what kind of resources and supports would be your highest priority at this time to match your will for some additional supports to take the next step forward?
I can't speak for financials behind it, but I can speak as a teacher. And for me, when I hear collaboration, time is the big word that comes up for me. Again, I'm speaking as a teacher. I'm sure my principal is. I think it's time. And the unique thing I think about our relationship with the district schools in Central Falls is that we're not creating something different for them to do. We're sharing what's worked for us. So I think that when you have these collaborations, you have to think about what's attainable and do it well. And that might be starting small. I'm sure as a teacher, I would love to share math and writing and social studies with my colleagues in the Central Falls district schools, but it's not attainable at this point because of time, because of money, because of that capacity. So I think it's smart to start small and do it well.
Time is one critical resource. And that's in your experience as well.
I do think, Warren, to your point about really documenting and sharing lessons and practices across other schools, other districts, other organizations, that is something that higher ed or others really could help with. Because while we're all doing the work, I have to confess I am not going home at night and writing it up. And I think, so when we say about, whether it's about charter schools or labor management collaborations, you know, that the goal is to share the lessons. I completely agree with that, but to your point, it assumes there is some capacity to do that. And to really share those lessons effectively, it's not just some of us going out and talking about it. It really is eventually having materials, having some evaluation, having some real following up the effort and documentation of the results.
From my upbringing and from where I come from, cash usually works. Having served 20 years in the General Assembly, would be interesting when it comes to education, people would say, well, you just can't throw money at the problem. And I would say, well, no, yes, you actually can. Money solves a lot. If you have no money and you need money, money solves the problem. Throwing cash is good. When we would have debates on the budget and the prison would come up and the prison would have, the director would testify before Finance Committee, we're $10 million over. And there wouldn't even be a hesitation. Okay, well, you must need the money. You're building a bigger prison, you have all these criminals you have to incarcerate, and we have no choice but to give it to you. It wasn't about, well, we're gonna hold you accountable, let's take a look at the lesson plans, what you're doing with the money, you have to rethink the way you use it. There's plenty of money there, you're just not using it properly. No, you get more. Only in education, and when you think about it, when I went to school, the charge was educate who you can. The business community actually had an interest in people not graduating high school. There were jobs for people who or just graduated, and they could feed their families. And then all of a sudden we said every child has to be educated. Every child. What if he said to GM, the car can't break down? Buy the car, that's it. 100 years. I think they would have to kind of retool and put some resources to get that accomplished. And other countries have done this and seen this. And from my own perspective, you know, it's nice to hear great things. They go, this is very innovative. And actually being here, invited here, is very nice. To say if Neil didn't give us the 100,000, I probably would have been late or not shown up. But
It's the first time you've been on time.
well, we're hoping for more. There's another application coming in. But I digress. But certainly, it's nice to hear these things and to be said, you know, you're bold, you're innovative, and this is a great idea. But governments should incentivize this. If you see behavior that you think deserves, and initiatives that you think deserve support, everyone doesn't have to be treated the same. And this is coming from a union president perspective. There's no incentive for anyone else to take the risk if there's no reward to that risk. If I can sit back and, you know, I'm going to just do things the way we've always been doing them, and I'm going to get the same share of the amount of money that's being allocated, well then why would I do anything different? So you have to have a system that rewards function and maybe has a hesitancy to fund dysfunction and rethink the way schools are funded and initiatives are funded. But yes, money is extremely important. And from colleges and universities, teacher preparation programs that actually meet the needs of those young teachers going into classrooms, having peer assistance and review programs, so when a teacher comes to Providence, it's not wing it. And I'm being literal. My first day, years ago, I have, you know, I'm here for 5 days. Are there lesson plans? Where's my room? It's the music room on the second floor. You're gonna have to wing it. Or the mirror test. If you want to work in a district, if there's condensation on the mirror, you can start. We should be very thoughtful about these individuals that take on a profession that is noble, not for the money, to support that individual and give that every individual every opportunity to succeed. And if the individual does not rise to the challenge, counsel them out in a very dignified, professional manner. And that costs some money. So yes, it is the will. I agree with Dr. Gallo. But if all too often, I think you're exactly right, that that will is sometimes taken advantage of. That if they're going to work harder and not going to ask for more money, we'll just keep seeing how hard they're going to work until they fall apart.
Don, what did you learn about this?
Well, I'm actually going to ask a question more, if you'll let me.
You're the deputy director of the
It's actually for the four of you. These are fragile ecologies that you're attempting to work through. And you're right, so if we don't document this, we won't really know. So I'd like to have each of you talk about some of the pain points you've experienced around this, so that the rest of the audience, you know, will actually understand what this is like, and so will we.
I can give you the number of my therapist.
It's all.
He has documented all of this.
For money.
I'll sign a release.
I'll speak. I came into the collaboration not in year one, but a few years later. And I think anytime you start collaborating, and I know it's the word's been thrown around a lot tonight, but assumptions. There are a lot of assumptions, and you just have to put them out on the table and talk about them. And I think as soon as that happens, then people start to trust. You have to just call it for what it is. Like, you think this about charter schools, you may think of this about district schools, and just really put it out there and start building that relationship. Because otherwise, nothing's going to work. And I think it's a hard thing to do. I'm teaching my 1- and 2-year-old to do it right now. I mean, it's a hard thing to do.
I think building on that, I think one thing good leadership does is build reservoirs of trust. So if you're a superintendent, you need a reservoir of trust with your board. You need a reservoir of trust with your district. You need a reservoir of trust, you're including your teachers, your central office staff, your administrators. You need a reservoir of trust with your city government. You need a reservoir of trust with your community. In our district, one of my biggest challenges was there really were no reservoirs of trust. And the way that applies to this work is, just as Jill said, there are lots of assumptions. And the reason a reservoir of trust is so important is when somebody blows it, which will happen frequently when you're trying to do something new especially, people give you the benefit of a doubt. Because they say, well, wasn't her best call this time, but last few times she's done all right. Or some other staff member. And especially in the beginning, and it still happens on both sides, something occurs and the other folks think, well, that had to be deliberate, That person's been in the district a long time and he's never wanted to be collaborative, or that person's been in the PTU leadership a long time, and he's always stirring the pot. And there's no, so sometimes my personal pain point and challenge has been sorting through that and then saying, well, this is actually what happened from the two different perspectives. And that's really trying to put those assumptions out on the table, but then really get people to not immediately assume that whatever occurred, which wasn't quite right, was absolutely deliberate and designed to provoke them personally, is a challenge.
In terms of struggles or pain points, it's been a progression from when I took office to here. There's the challenges of a membership. In 2002, it was a much different environment and a much different membership, and I think Fran came on shortly after that in Providence. But I made a conscious decision, as well as having the support of my executive board, to go down this path, and fully expecting not to be warmly received. Having a thick skin helps. I think that in most, I'm not the typical union, I didn't come up on the typical way as a union leader. I wasn't the building delegate for X number of years, served on the executive board for X number of years, and waited my turn I kind of came on to the scene. I expected those challenges. What I didn't expect is moving forward, and I thought I would be well received by school boards, by superintendents. And I was kind of taken aback when it was not so much. One, we don't believe you, or two, we're much more comfortable in the traditional role. I mean, we hear all the time these contracts are industrial model contracts, and the union is stuck in this industrial model. Well, let me clue you in, so is management in some cases, because that's a comfort zone. So getting out of comfort zones can be difficult, but that's been a struggle. And the obvious, as we've mentioned over and over again, consistency in leadership and predictability in policy. I think what turns teachers off continuously is the constant change. And one of the challenge, and understanding the challenge of a superintendent, which I'm trying to do.
He's doing reasonably well.
But clearly, and one of the things we've been talking, it's my job, and I always felt this way, I succeed if the superintendent succeeds. They're gone are the days, we don't have the luxury of going at each other, because other people are going at us. And in some cases, on charter schools. And getting that message to my membership that we have competition, and that we have to really be focused on moving the school forward. So, yeah, Sue has challenges that I have to appreciate. That it's easy for the superintendent to come in and say, I'm going to do this, that, the other thing, and the union's the problem. And that's, you talked about fights. The public likes a great fight. If we called a press conference, talk about how we're getting along, we could have it in a phone booth. But if I issue a press release that we're marching on 797 with a petition to the superintendent to get out of town, you can best believe the press will be there in droves. And just last year, when 2,000 teachers are fired, the press from all over the country was here. But when we resolve that conflict amicably, to the credit of the administration as well as the union, and then we continue to move forward, try to find someone who's going to put that in the front page of the paper. So those are some of the painful experiences that you go through as a leader, and I think the will to continue is what's essential. Fran, why don't you speak a little bit about Come on, let's share. This is like a group session. Hi, I'm Steve, and I've been a union president for 9 years.
Well, I'm going to bring us back to where we belong. This is about the pains in the developing charter district compact. I won't go way back. I won't. And I think what we need to remember is very simply, we're human beings. For the most part, school, education, classroom, wherever, it's a human endeavor. And the pains are really caused by the human conflict. To the extent that we can build those reservoirs of trust, that we can act with integrity, that we can keep to a moral compass, it's easy to stay together, it's easy to cooperate, it's easy to forgive each other, it's easy to stay on track. For me, and if I go back to the most painful moments, I mean, death threats, threats to my grandchildren's lives, I won't go there. You forgive, you forget, you move on. It's a shame that I cannot be here with my union president. It doesn't make sense. The one thing that will always hold back this district, while it is a district, is the fact that there is no chance at this point in time of bringing true collaboration to the table. The most painful parts come when the teachers themselves rally around you, want you to succeed, but visit you in the stealth of the night to tell it to you, because they're afraid of their union leadership. Come on, that's not cooperation. That's not even grown-up activity. And it's not American. We, in our hands, is the American education, which by all counts, by all test results, it's not at the top of the charts in the world anymore. And the only thing that's going to bring it back together is willpower, a moral compass, and a commitment to the children.
Carrie, I know you have a question. I want to insert something into this conversation. You're right, the media focuses on negatives. And you've all been caricatured as adults. Superintendents have been caricatured, union leaders, our leaders. And so it's sometimes hard to believe you now in this cooperative space and just want to do adults. But what convinced me most of all in the conversations that we had this morning was when we talked to a group of students at Central Falls, Young Leadership Circle, and heard them talk about the positive changes that had occurred, how it affected them and motivated them, but how they felt denigrated by the media's portrayal of their school. And as a result, the acceptance of that portrayal by other adults and other students outside. They were hurt by that.
Very much.
Now, I was positively moved by that more than I could be moved by Steve to say they're making up things that are not fun. And while I do believe you, because I know you and I respect the two of you, I just wondered how you and your work nationally, and you and your work locally are capitalizing on this resource. There's often hidden that we all say we're working on their behalf, but they're not here to express their views, their excitement, and their fears and concerns. So what are we doing to lift student voice and use it as a powerful resource in this change effort, both on the advocacy side, but informing how we transform curriculum instruction?
I'm glad to hear that they were articulate. I didn't attend, and as I expressed to you, to give them full freedom. I have built a tremendous amount of trust in Central Falls at the high school with our high school students. And one thing we did immediately and have continued to do is build their voice. And not just by joining this organization or that organization, but by making it meaningful. Anything and everything we do, every committee we have, the accreditation committee, the global studies work that we're doing, every single committee has students on it so that the student voice is empowered. They come to our trustee meetings and frequently speak. They are honored at every opportunity possible, any kind of recognition. We're out there beating the drums and telling them, these are our children from Central Falls. And they are definitely picking it up. Our 9th grade class this year was called the Shazam class, because we said, Shazam, you're here, you're gonna stay, and you're gonna make it, and when you graduate, that's gonna be our hooting cry, because we want them to know they are successful, they have within them all that it takes, and they literally need to change the reputation, unfavorably as it is, and very unfortunately put upon them as the dangerous school. I mean, I still get people who say, oh, you walk there at night? You're there, you close that building? And I'm like, well, yeah, you know. And these kids, they'll yell at me from their 3rd floor apartments. Dr. Gallo, what are you doing out? It's late. As I'm walking back to my car. They're there. They know we care. They've gotten that message. They challenged us about that transformation and that hell we went through. But they found where the truth was, because the truth stands up straight and it doesn't go around, I don't care who's yelling what from where. It took a while, but they found it, they know it, they're grounded, and they have not just maybe a voice, but literally a voice, a say in everything we do.
I want to say something not directly about students, but going back to, I think It's absolutely true that controversy and conflict sell newspapers, but I think it's also absolutely true that controversy and conflict do not sell school systems to families. And that's what I mean about this. This is what I mean. When I go to community events, parent groups, etc., a frequent question is, especially for, and not all of our families have really the choice or the option to move elsewhere, but some of them do. And the question is, you know, I have young preschool age children, and we're really wondering if we can trust what's going to happen in the Providence system for our kids. And so I think you're absolutely right to point out the student voice and the need for that. We also need the family voice, which is nobody with means says, I'm going to move to a community with a school system that is at each other's throats in constant turmoil so my kids can get a good education. So while it would be great if we could sell the story more to the media, it's even more important to build a system that honors our children and our families so that they want to be there. And that, to me, is what we need to create and sell.
Okay.
You just don't follow Fran. I have a question. We still have the majority of our kids in the public schools, and we do want to learn from each other. And one of the pieces that are always stated is that the reason you have the charters and the reason they're successful is because they get waivers from rules, regs, different things. I listened to you, both of you, both groups, and you're not referring to any of these things. It's coming from the heart, it's coming from the will, it's coming. So my question is, Fran, mostly, is were there things that you had to actually waive, to eliminate, or were you able to do what you did within the restrictions of what we call, public schools kind of rules and regulations? Because we do want it to move, and we do want to learn from each other. And is that are those barriers, or can they be mitigated and we can just move on?
Terry, just for clarification,
Yeah.
do you mean in the transformation of the high school? Are you specifically asking me if we waived anything in that manner?
As you were moving into the collaborations and doing things a little differently,
Oh, right.
did you have to waive, did you have to do things differently, or just kind of?
I love my magic wand. No, the answer is really no, absolutely not. We did promote a policy at the school board that encouraged collaboration and would welcome it, and made sure that there was no policy barrier to getting together. But we didn't waive anything, and nothing's changed, and we've built curriculum together, we've certainly learned classroom strategies together. Right. Thank you.
Go right ahead, Anna.
Can I just build on that? Because that was actually the question I was going to ask. So for those of us who are in that policy sphere, are there policy changes that would A, make this easier for both of you, facilitate your collaboration, and B, think about ways to move this from, scattershot, isolated incidents, that's Mark's word, to more scalable opportunities to model this?
Well, I think obviously the goal is to do just that. Superintendent Johnson years ago would tell principals, there's nothing you can't use the contract as an excuse not to get something done. What we've done with UP and reciprocal obligation is the school has the ability to waive any aspect of the collective bargaining agreement and seek a waiver to school board policy. I think the real key is to get them to believe that actually can happen. It's kind of, okay, you got all this freedom, and they're like, I don't really believe that it's the case. So I can't point to a policy other than a school board policy that clearly endorses what is happening and supports that, and then do the work at the schools to really, we get it, but it's certainly not enough. To your point, it has to be about students realizing that the place they go to school is a hell of a lot different than where they, just last year, that they see the improvement, that the teachers see the improvement, and then hopefully there may be, from that, a request to the, to the policy people in a school department, in the city, in the state, to say, we really need this policy change because we're seeing that there's an obstacle here. But just getting that off the ground and having teachers and principals exercise the authority they already have and realize that it's there is I think the challenge right now.
Angela, this isn't all policy with a capital P, but I think one thing Steve said earlier about figuring out ways to incentivize good behavior or collaborative behavior or whatever you're trying to see. I also think vehicles such as the Mayor's Children and Youth Cabinet can be incredibly important because the more understanding there is of the work we're trying to do for kids, both in the schools and across the community, the more collective support there will be. And I think it's easier. It's never easy to change, but the more support and understanding there is for that, and in a sense, you incentivize that kind of behavior by also noticing it and saying good things about it across the community. I think that shouldn't be underestimated. And then to Steve's point, that may cause some things to bubble up that would be real policy changes in the future.
The time for one cataclysmic question. Cataclysmic in nature. You're not going to ask that. Okay, well, I'm going to ask a question.
I don't think anything I say would ever be called cataclysmic. So please put it for what it's worth. But I think that we have to be careful with the charters for calling them out to be expected to be better than central districts. Because I think that perception that we should be producing a higher expectancy for the charters aids competition more than collaboration. And I think we should just be careful of that. That's my little one on that.
If they weren't doing a better job, why would I collaborate to learn more?
But I think from a policy side,
They are doing a better job, and we need to get there.
Final words? John, I'll give you the final word. Person who came all the way across the country to join us in this conversation. You have that word.
This work is really about local heroes, and you have 4 in front of you tonight. It's remarkable to see. I guess what I would make one addendum to the Central Falls kids. They were disbelievers, as you heard today, that adults our age could either A, hear about Twitter, or B, tweet. They were relatively shocked today when Denise and Warren and I talked about the fact that we actually do. Well, Warren doesn't. I would like to put in a plug for Student Voice. Sometimes we do things that we just shake our heads at the foundation. Or you shake your heads at that we do at the foundation. In the pursuit of a deep evidence base, we spend $51 million to learn that when kids have an opportunity to give their teachers feedback, their teachers get better. And the very notion of student surveys in the interest of their education that happen consistently and persistently lifts the spirits of the youngsters and the teachers who hold their futures in their hands. So I wouldn't miss that opportunity. So
I want to give Neil and Denise an opportunity to make some closing statements and
I yield the floor to Denise.
There she is, right behind me.
I want to thank everybody. Like I said, I still kind of stand and shake my head like, is this kind of stuff really, really happening? And one of the things, I know that there are policies certainly that need to be changed, but one of the things that kept on occurring to me when being asked the question about why is it working with the learning community in Central Falls, it's been teacher to teacher. And we have wonderful teachers who can make powerful changes. That's what the agreement in Providence is hopefully going to help the teachers have that. So, you know, like, yeah, we always come to the bad performance of this or that. You know, let's remember that our teachers are the most valuable tools as our children are in schools. So I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to tell people that I know people would probably like to talk with Don. We've got to whisk him out of here, guys. So I'm sorry about that. But I'll give you his tweet address, okay? Thanks a lot.